Good morning to our esteemed guests joining us online. Thank you very much for making the time to be with us today. Today, we are here to discuss a very important topic, retirement planning, and really why you should think about it, you should consider it in your estate plan. This is the Legacy Series, a platform curated by Botswana Life that we launched back in April, where we hosted here in our offices a handful of clients, really having meaningful conversations around, unpacking the economy and really what that means for wealth and financial planning, as well as the importance of estate planning. Today, however, as I've already mentioned, we are talking retirement planning and why it is important that you think about it, you should consider it while you're doing your estate planning. My name is Kelebogile Chunga. I am PR, Communications and Marketing Manager with Botswana Life. And I am not alone this morning. I am joined by a team of experts, my panel here, excuse me. I'm going to request that they each introduce themselves, starting with the gentleman on my far left.
Thank you, Kileborile.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Senatla Kabomu. I work on the actuarial team at Botswana Life, with my core focus area being retirement annuities and pension benefits. And yeah, I'll be here to talk to you today about retirement planning.
Thank you so much for that, Senatla, and welcome. Over to you, Me.
Thank you, Kilebogile. My name is Refilo Mokwe. I work as part of the retail distribution team at Botswana Life, and I talk to clients about estate planning, which involves your wills, your trusts, and ensuring that our clients' estates are well protected in the event of a death or incapacitation.
Thank you for that, and welcome, Refilo. And last, definitely not least, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Machunga, and good morning to the viewers at home. My name is Lao Nesekonyane. I'm the Client Relations Manager at Botswana Insurance Fund Management, which is the investment company operating under the BHL Group. My role is business development and client servicing, so essentially I help large institutional investors, such as retirement funds, achieve their investment objectives.
Thank you so much, and welcome once again. Maybe just to jump right into it, I've already, laid the foundation ya gore re bua ka gaeng today. Re bua ka retirement planning, re bua ka estate planning. I want to bring you in here, Senatla, just to we are lehela nicely before we start. How retirement planning, re bua ka gaeng? How estate planning? What are we talking about, and where do these two concepts meet?
Okay, thank you, Kileborile. So at Botswana Life, we view retirement planning and estate planning as really two sides of the same coin, with the retirement planning side more focused on building and accumulating wealth while you are working that can then be used to sustain you while you're no longer working, and the estate planning side more focused on what happens to that wealth when you are no longer here, and also what happens to the obligations associated to that wealth when you are no longer here. So these are both critical financial plans, and it's quite key to ensure that they are working together to achieve your objectives. Thank you, Kileborile.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I also want to now shift a little bit of focus to you, Refilo. In your introduction, you spoke about the wills and trusts. How, can you just unpack those two concepts and, and what they mean in the context of estate planning?
Thank you, Kilebogile. Ke tla simolola ka go tlhalosa or maybe go atolosa yone estate planning to say sometimes we assume that estate planning is this complex thing that we do. But estate planning is really just deciding in advance the structure of how you wish your estate to be managed. And it often involves and mostly involves making those financial considerations, which will then help ensure that in the event that you pass on or you are incapacitated, your beneficiaries get what it is that they're supposed to get in the event that you are no more or are incapacitated. And when we talk about incapacitation also, we are talking about a situation where maybe you are alive, but you're not able to do anything in terms of take care of your own financial needs, go to work, maybe you had an accident, you were paralyzed as a result, and therefore now you can no longer earn an income or do much for yourself. So that is what about incapacitation or even just being born with a disability. So it's important to plan your estate because if you are not planning your estate, there is going to be a lot of uncertainty. Sinatla spoke about building your wealth and protecting it. Now, where there's no plan, the problem is that then anything can happen, and that is where now maybe your assets will become dilapidated, misused, or underused, if I should say so. Now, in estate planning, the connection between estate planning and your will is that as a result of having done these series of tasks where you make decisions as to will your children still continue going to the same schools that they go to, will your dependents still be taken care of, will your assets be maintained in a certain way, then you have to reduce that into some form of writing or direction, and we use these tools called a will or a trust. So the estate planning conversation is actually more packed than just getting a will or getting a trust. And sometimes we say an example of somebody who started planning their estate can be them considering getting an investment plan in place to say, I'm putting a little aside to ensure that in the event I'm now for the very topic that we're here for. You're in a retirement planning to say, I'm retired, I have somewhere where I can tap into these funds. It could be about getting a life cover, finding ways to tie that with your estate to ensure that these obligations that we're talking about, that Sinatla mentioned earlier, are taken care of. Most of us, we have this thing of nominating our beneficiaries. But here at Botswana Life, we really do try and educate the client to ensure that the client is aware that there are other ways of structuring your wealth, of structuring your products that you have with us, and outside Botswana Life as well, to ensure that they speak to your holistic estate plan. So it's nothing complex. It's something that we can all do here. We start even just with getting a funeral cover, because death has that financial impact, and therefore by getting a funeral cover, you're saying, if I pass on, there should be some provision financially for how I'm going to be sent off. So basically, that is what it is.
Love it. I like how you talk about the fact that it's nothing really complex. In your how Atolosa estate planning, you spoke about wills and trusts, and you explained it really beautifully as to what those two concepts are. But there is this thing, ya gore, batho ba kgona go akanya gore kana nna, I'm not moneyed, I'm not wealthy. You're really trust the wealthy and stuff. I want us to just maybe delve a little bit deeper into that and to say, the guests joining us to really understand who is eligible for Anneli Wheelie, why, what is the importance, and what is really the space of a will in someone's life and financial planning. And that's not really is just the question. Direct this into Refilo Hela. Please feel free to join should anybody have something to chip in.
Yeah. Thank you, Mechunga. I think for me, at its simplest level, all of us qualify to have a will. Whether you have a loved one or you have an asset, it's really just a set of instructions that you would like to be followed in the event of your passing. So it can also include taking care of your young children, how you would like your funeral arrangements to be provided for, or the distribution of your assets in the event of your passing.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And if I may also add, I like the example that Laun is giving to say who's going to take care of your children. And then the way we do that is we also ask the question to say, where is the money to be taking care of the children? We all know that children are maintained, and they are not just given love, but they also have to be maintained financially. So what we then do is, if you have written that your child's guardian will be so and so, the question then is, okay, letseno le kae, la go tswela ile gore ngwana o tla tswela ile gore a tshela botshelo bone ile gore wena as the parent you wanted them to continue living. So all that also ties into estate planning. So everyone that has something to protect, be it an asset, be it a child, be it an interest that they're looking to perhaps sometimes inherit, it's important to try and reduce everything that would be in your mind. All of us here, Sinatla, if I was to ask you, do you have an idea where you wish to be buried? You already know.
Yeah.
But the idea is to perhaps then ensure that at that point in time, you've reduced that idea to writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think maybe just to also remind our audience, our guests, please feel free at any given point in time during the discussion. If you have a comment, a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And towards the end of our webinar, towards the end of our discussion, we will then dedicate a little bit of time to addressing those. I think the conversation lands nicely to the direction I want to take us. I want us to talk about the misconceptions that one may have as far as retirement planning and estate planning are both concerned. If retirement funds are often really the largest financial asset that one can have, why do so many of us misunderstand what actually happens to those benefits in the event that I pass away? Why do you think that that is? Laune, if you don't mind taking that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mechunga. And you're quite right, it is a misconception that we do need to address. And my colleagues have laid a very good foundation for me in setting my response. I'll give an example that will really drive this home. So there was a newspaper article just a few days ago about a South African man who had passed away and as part of his will had provided for his sister and child. Now, one would naturally assume that if only those individuals are named in the will, then all of the assets within that person's estate and their broader wealth would be distributed in the same way. However, with respect to the retirement benefits that he had accumulated, the Board of Trustees had identified another individual who was financially dependent on the deceased and provided for that individual as part of the distribution of their retirement benefits. Now, this can often lead to conflict, and my colleague Sinatle did highlight that these two items should be treated as complementary. They should speak to each other and add on top of each other. And the important part for the audience to really remember is that your retirement benefits will not be distributed in a manner that's similar to other assets within your estate. This is because your assets in your name would be controlled by you. However, the retirement benefits or the accumulated assets within a retirement fund would be controlled by what's called a Board of Trustees. This is a group of individuals who have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to ensure that your pension benefit is distributed to your financial dependents in a manner that's fair and equitable to them. They would do this first and foremost by relying on your beneficiary nomination form. This is a tool or an instrument that you'd use to guide the thinking of the Board of Trustees, to alert them to anyone that you've been providing for financially and how you'd like your pension benefit to be distributed to them. However, the Board of Trustees have an additional responsibility to do their own investigation, to identify anyone that would have been dependent on you financially, and also ensure that they are provided for in the distribution of your retirement benefits. So let's speak to the beneficiary nomination form for just a second. I did highlight that it's a very important tool that you as an individual can write down or distill the people that you provide for and provide an allocation of your retirement benefits in the event of your passing. Now, you would need to ensure that this document is not only updated regularly, but is also quite comprehensive. You include anyone and everyone that you've been providing for, and this, in the case of my example, does lead to a bit of conflict, as some of the loved ones that we have in our lives may not be known to our nuclear family, but the Board of Trustees will find them, so it is important that you communicate that with your loved ones so that there are no surprises in the event of your death. So you did highlight that retirement benefits can, if done properly, form the single largest asset within your broader wealth. If that's the case and you have provided for yourself sufficiently in the form of your retirement, it can also be a tool that you use to leave behind a lasting legacy for your loved ones.
Fantastic. You spoke about the beneficiaries nomination form, and before I shift to Senatla and Refile to maybe just share a little bit about some of the misconceptions that you think exist in this space, I want us to talk about this beneficiaries nomination form. I know typically the one time you come into contact with this form is when you're in a new environment, when you're in a new job, and it's buried within a stack of paperwork that you need to go through.
Yeah.
There's forms you need to complete, and you're going to be jumping into induction straight after. So a lot of the time, I think people don't really take a moment to think about the things you're writing there, the details you're putting there, the beneficiaries as you speak of. I want you to maybe try and tota hela o gatelle the importance of giving it thought. If you need to take it home overnight, do that. But why? Why is it important that you take the time to think through what you put in your nomination form?
Thank you, Mechunga. And you're quite right. It is a very important document, and I would encourage the audience to really think about the people they write down in that beneficiary nomination form. So the reason why you would need to apply a bit of thought behind it is because essentially you'd be providing or conducting a needs analysis on your financial dependents. In the case of young children, for example, as my colleague did highlight, you would need to provide for them in the event of your passing, and so you would need to assess whether they are young children, they still need to go through school, whether they're working adults, they may be less vulnerable in the event of your absence financially, and then also to ensure that it's comprehensive. Include everyone that you know that you support. Also, take the time to regularly review the beneficiary nomination form. So ideally, at least once a year, you should go back to that document, update it where there have been life changes, whether it's marriage, divorce, whether your children have grown up and now they have contact details, they have cell phones, just to make it a little bit easier for the Board of Trustees to locate those individuals within the beneficiary nomination form.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
please, Refilwe.
so if I may also add, Lana also spoke about the fact that your retirement funds do not necessarily form part of your estate, especially on distribution at the time of death. And this is a common misconception we also see on the estate planning side, whereby it is okay to mention that you've got a retirement fund at, say, Botswana Life, at BFM, at BIHL, or wherever it is that you wish to mention. But it's also important, and I think this needs to be highlighted, that you need to align that with what you would have written in your beneficiary form. And as you align that, as you review your beneficiary form, it's also important because a will also is not a static document. You can continuously review to reflect your current, circumstances. So what we see a lot is that some people do believe that, okay, because I've said it in my will and written it down in my will, my executor will be able to execute according to my wishes. But then that is where then your executor will then be caught off guard to say, look, the trustees will tell them that we are going to follow the discretion that we need to follow as trustees of this pension fund or retirement fund.
Awesome. So I
Yeah.
guess maybe the takeaway really from that is that it's important that you review these documents quite regularly, and
Very true.
you're advising, if possible, do it every year.
Yes.
If you've had children, if you've now gotten married or unfortunately divorced, and now you've got other children in the new marriage, please do ensure that you're constantly reviewing these forms. Just a quick reminder once again, if you do have a question, a comment, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We are going to be looking at those shortly. Maybe just to bring it back to the individual, this conversation we're having, knowing how the process works, right? What simple actions can one take in the immediate to make it a little bit easier for them and their families, for their trustees, when the time comes, to implement the retirement plans? I want to maybe just invite you, Senatla, maybe to weigh in on this question a little bit.
Thank you, Kilebogile. So I think from a retirement planning perspective, the first step to assess your retirement readiness will always be understanding your own net replacement ratio. And this net replacement ratio is essentially the percentage of pre-retirement income, so your current salary, that your retirement savings are likely to replace once they are converted. So many people discover that they are too late. They discover too late that they are on track to replace a small fraction of what they are currently earning. And at that point, it's very hard to react and sort of take measures to fill the gap. Right. So the way that you can avoid this situation is you need to review your pension fund balance regularly. So I know, at least in our business and in other places, our funds will share those balances with us annually. And they'll also share the projected balance at the legal retirement age, right? And it's your responsibility to then take that and go to your financial advisor and say, what does this projected balance actually get me in the market, even just today?
Yeah.
Right? And that will be able to give you a good understanding of where your net replacement ratio will fall. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you speak about net replacement ratio. Le bua mafoko a thata.
Yeah.
I just want you to just maybe by way of an example, what does this mean? I'm earning 10,000 pula right now.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the context of what I'm earning now vis-a-vis what I would be earning at retirement?
Yeah, so with net replacement ratio, I'll use that example that you gave of earning 10,000 pula. In the retirement planning space, they often recommend 70 to 80% replacement, right? So with that 10,000 pula, you would want to replace 70 to 80% of that. So 7 to 8,000 pula is what you would ideally want as your replacement. And the reason why it's a little bit lower than the 10,000 you are earning is that we assume that some of the expenses that you incur as being employed, you will no longer have to incur those. You don't have to drive to work every day. You don't have to buy lunch. All those expenses around you being a worker, they now fall off. But some of your core expenses also stick with you, right? So then that's why we hence the 70 to 80%. And yeah, with that 10K, you would want at least 7 to 8,000 as your quote unquote net replacement ratio. And people can adapt this to their own personal salary. And that number alone should give you a good understanding of how ready you are for retirement.
All right. So one of the things you're encouraging our listeners, our guests to do is to regularly be in contact with their financial advisor in order for them to guide them through gore ga e le gore my projected balance is going to be X amount.
Yeah.
Go tle be go raya gore my net replacement ratio, which means salary ke tlebeng ke e amogela ke retired. Let's just say in my conversation with my financial advisor, I'm discovering that I'm sitting at 4,000 pula, for instance.
Yeah.
And I know that 4,000 pula is not going to be enough for me.
Yeah.
Are there immediate things that I can do to help that?
Definitely.
Ke sentse ke le mo mmerekong.
Definitely. So the first one I think that we'll all be familiar with is you can increase your pension contribution voluntarily with your employer, so they'll take more out of your current earnings to push towards that savings, and hopefully that should convert to a higher net replacement. But over and above that, you can get an additional product. I know at Botswana Life we have products that are specifically geared to that, where these products are additional savings that are separate from your pension fund but managed similarly such that they will still grow. And when you reach retirement, you can then use those funds to top up and get you to that 70% as opposed to maybe the 4,000, which would be 40% in
Yeah.
our hypothetical scenario that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe just to add on to that, in addition to increasing your additional voluntary contributions, as well as potentially getting an additional retirement product, you can also look at investment products that are available in the market. At BIFM, we have unit trusts that are available for individuals that you can use to grow and build your wealth over time. Of course, any investment does come with risk, so obviously seek the advice of your financial advisor to understand the nature of the product that you're getting invested into.
Wonderful. I think also what that means to us then is the earlier the better, right?
Yes.
So the earlier you start, the better.
Yes, this is actually very important, because when you look at retirement savings, compounding really goes a long way. So compounding, I mean, the interest or the yield, the earnings that you've made this year, are actually then added to what you can make next year. So even a small amount that you're putting forth now can be much more effective, as when you start earlier, as opposed to contributing a larger amount later. So
Yeah.
the earlier the better. And yeah, that really speaks to maybe the misconceptions we spoke about earlier, where people think that they have a lot of time because we're talking about retirement, we're talking about wills, and people just assume, oh, these things apply to old people. I'm still a young man. I don't
Yeah.
need to be worried about a will or a retirement plan. But the nature of these events is that they're unpredictable. So you may be forced into early retirement by circumstances beyond your control, or God forbidding, you may have to leave us, and the assets that you've accumulated here, even at your young age, will then now be in dispute or at the mercy of
Yeah.
whatever vehicles are in place to dispensate them.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
please go ahead.
It sounds like consistency is also another one.
Yes, yes.
It's starting early from what I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
Consistency might be,
Yeah,
starting small, starting early, but being consistent.
Yeah.
Mm.
also.
absolutely.
Yes. No, I just wanted to really underscore what Senatla and my colleague has said here. We have a phrase in financial markets that goes, timing the market, or time in the market rather, is better than timing the market. And what that means very simply is that a small contribution over time can exceed a more aggressive contribution later in life because, like Senatla has said, it's had time to compound in the market. The investment returns that you earn this year can generate investment returns themselves next year in addition to the contribution that you make. So you have more money in the market that's working harder for you and it continues to grow every year.
Yeah. Your future self will thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I think that leads us nicely to where I really wanted us to move this conversation to, which is really around planning for life's complexities. I think someone mentioned incapacitation at some point. We know that life almost never follows a straight line, right? How should retirement and estate planning adapt when families become a little bit more complex? For example, ya ka tsona dikgang tsa gore o nyetswe, or you've now left a marriage, you've got children and stuff like that. I'm going to invite maybe Laune to start, and then I'll invite my other panelists to come in once you're done.
Yes. No, I think for me, it goes back to the will that my colleague highlighted and also the beneficiary nomination form. The need to both keep them up to date and comprehensive. So as you've highlighted, you will go through life changes. You will enter a marriage. You may unfortunately exit a marriage. You will have children. So all of these needs to be distilled into those two documents, just to ensure that everyone that you would be providing for is catered for in the event of your absence.
Absolutely. Refilwe, I don't know if you want to chip in there.
Yeah, so I think mine will be in relation to, it's not a complexity per se, but it is a circumstance that you may find yourself in relation to estate planning, whereby I think we spoke about it earlier, haribuaka bana, like nomination forms. Sometimes we do have children later in life, and maybe you had your firstborn while you were still in your mid-20s, right? Then you have your lastborn in your early 40s. These two children are different, though you love them both. So sometimes what we do is, even from a retirement planning perspective, we give these children the same amount in the beneficiary form. So it's important to look at them as individuals. I think Senatla may have mentioned it earlier, to say, look at them as individuals and look at their financial needs at that point. The younger one will need more. And then that also tallies with the estate planning bit, to say, if you're going to give your children equal everything in your estate, that might be a bit uneven or a bit unfair, because the youngest child would have to go much further in life via schooling. So you need to make sure that there's a plan in place for that younger child. So from your retirement product, you need to make sure that you've nominated the percentages correctly, as well as in your will, to ensure that the children are well taken care of according to their needs. Because another thing that we need to highlight is that there is a difference between boswa le tlhokomelo ya ngwana, inheritance or maintenance. So if you are not making the necessary provision or sufficient provision in your estate for your child, you may find, or your dependent, you may find that they may have to now claim against your estate for maintenance. And then that maintenance is paid first out of the estate before the estate is distributed. So to avoid the unnecessary back and forth of, oh no, Gifilwe $1 million versus being given 2 million because I still have to go to high school, that planning from both ends, on the retirement planning side as well as on the estate planning side, needs to meet and match. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if you had something to add before we jump into the next question, Senatla.
Yeah, I think I can just quickly add to that. So, oftentimes, another complexity we find ourselves in is that more and more, increasingly with the unemployment numbers, how they are, you find that people have adult children that are still dependent on them, or even grandchildren that are still dependent on them at retirement. So, as part of your retirement planning, your product selection, the retirement, the pension benefit you select, there are also options there that can sort of mitigate the risks of your untimely passing, causing much more financial distress. In that these options can guarantee certain amounts, at least within a certain time frame, to help keep supporting your children. So you really need to think about those deliberations. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we're seeing more and more of that, as you've mentioned, with the high unemployment rates in the country. I just also want to remind you once again, our esteemed guests, anyone joining us online, for you to put your comments, your questions in the chat. We are going to be shifting focus to those in just a little short while. But I just wanted to also, just following up to the question I asked you guys now, is, what happens in my estate and retirement plan in the event that I get incapacitated? What happens? I don't know if Refilo, maybe you'd be interested in taking that.
Okay, from sorry. So from an estate planning perspective, what would happen is that because now there's no money coming in, but there's a lot more coming out of your estate because maybe you need medical attention, you need to maintain yourself, and sometimes even the beneficiaries or the dependents that you have, because what then happens is that incapacitation then can negatively affect the estate by reducing its gross worth, its overall worth,
Yeah.
because now a lot more is being taken out of the estate and you may be forced into early retirement. So that is why it's important to ensure that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know I don't know if I'm going to have an accident and be paralyzed. I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. And therefore, similar to what both my colleagues said earlier, starting early, being consistent, can also help in the case of incapacitation, which can be brought about by various factors. And in such a situation, it is then important to ensure that because you can be incapacitated in your early 30s due to some illness that would have come up, maybe some biological factor. And you are 30 years old, but you are likely to live on for 50 more years. So savings for retirement, savings for yourself are very important, because your estate will be somewhat kind of distributed or in part at that point in time, because now you become a dependent of your own self or of your own estate. And if we take that and link it to the fact that your child, even on death, requires you to maintain them from your estate. Now imagine a situation where now you cannot provide even for yourself by going to work, earning an income. So when that happens, it's important. Incapacitation can also be a simple thing if we simplify it, like, as we grow up, we see that people, adults or elders suffer from things like dementia. That means that you can't actually go to the bank, withdraw or just go to the ATM. So you need a lot of support in that. In the estate planning world, it's an issue of who have you appointed to be this person who takes care of your affairs in such a position. Are they getting paid for that? And where is the money coming from? We normally call such a person a curator. This is the person who would kind of hold power of attorney over your affairs to ensure that no one is taking advantage of you, your assets, and whatever it is that you're trying to build for your children. And obviously it does eventually tie into le le kanang kang la retirement. Like Laone said earlier, gore it does sometimes, your retirement fund can be your largest asset in your estate, and it can help you le wena o santse o tlhokahetse in such a situation.
Yes.
Wonderful. Did you want to weigh in?
No, I just thought of something that we hadn't really spoken much about. It doesn't relate to incapacitation, but it really speaks to provisions within the Retirement Funds Act that allow members to encash a certain portion of their retirement. So I wanted to speak to Sanatla about that and the drastic negative impact that they can have on one's accumulated benefit. Now, obviously, the provision is that one can encash either when they change jobs or when they retire, where they're allowed to encash about 50%. They are allowed to do this, and where there is a need to do this, they should. However, they should think very carefully about that encashment because it does reduce the accumulated benefit, and it ultimately leads to a lower retirement annuity product being purchased at the end of their retirement life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to just jump straight into that, Sanatla, around what the law says you can and can't do? Maybe speak about at the point of changing jobs and then move it to the 50% commutation
Sure.
at retirement.
Sure. So this is, I'd say, a topic that we speak quite a bit about, especially in the retirement annuities leg of Botswana Life, to say you don't have to withdraw anything from your retirement fund. These are all optional. These are options that are given to you,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, what was the thinking when these options were being provided was that you may have an emergency, say you change jobs and you need to move across the country, right? That's why the 25% of the fund was made available. But in the scenario where you're just changing jobs and you're going across the street, there's really no need for you to go and cash 25% because you're just making it harder for your fund value to climb back up to that net replacement ratio. And it becomes even more so important, I'd say, with the 50%, because yes, the changing jobs, it's a lower percentage, but also you still have a chance to build that fund value back up. But with the 50%, since that's at retirement, whatever you take has a direct impact on what's available to you as far as a retirement annuity product. So if I take 50% of what's in the fund, just mathematically, it says whatever salary I could have converted into that fund, I've cut it in half.
Yeah. Maybe just explain it to me like a 12-year-old, right? You talk about an annuity, you purchase an annuity at retirement. Can you just explain, what happens throughout my employment journey? How you contribute to my pension, my employer now contribute up until the point at which now I'm retiring. Maybe let's just take it a step a little bit back to just explain that journey.
Okay, so most of our typical journeys is once you become permanent and pensionable at your workplace, you and your employer will agree on some split where you both contribute into a fund that is managed by a third party. And that third party's mandate is essentially to grow this fund for you year on year, grow those contributions and the interest earned on those contributions year on year, such that when you reach retirement, you can use those funds to purchase an annuity. But there's no fixed rule to say you're entitled to this much because you contributed this much. This depends entirely on the market at the time and also on how much you've accumulated. Hence the terminology that I've been using of conversion, right? So you are mainly just accumulating savings. These are retirement savings that you're accumulating throughout your work life through your contributions and the employer's contributions. And then at retirement, we'll give you the option to take 50%, or you can take the entire savings and convert that by purchasing an annuity. And that annuity is going to be your pension. That's what it will actually sustain you into your twilight years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we are dealing tota. We know that Gaule in employment will contribute 10% of your salary towards your pension. Your employer contributes maybe another 10. That goes into a savings, like a savings of sorts.
Yeah.
And then Madiawa accumulating at retirement, you get told up to 50%. But the honest truth is you don't have to take the entire 50%,
You
right?
have to take any.
You don't have to take
choose.
anything. You can decide. You can decide you're going to take the entire 1 million, 2 million, 10 million pula that you've accumulated over your work life and buy an annuity with that. And then, therefore, for the rest of your life, you'll be earning a salary from this
This annuity.
saving, right?
Yeah.
But what I also wanted to just maybe make a little bit clear, not only for the guests as well as for myself, is that obviously from what you have explained, obviously it means the more you've saved, the more you've accumulated,
Yeah.
is the better your retirement salary is, I get.
Exactly.
So we want to
Very true.
encourage people to always ensure
Yeah.
that by beds it's able to
Yes.
And this
Okay.
is why the
And-
planning aspect is quite important. You need to understand where you're going and how to get there.
Yeah.
Regularly reviewing your pension statements, engaging with your financial advisors, and plugging the gaps where there are gaps, so that by the time you reach retirement, you are fairly assured of a comfortable retirement.
Fantastic. Just a quick reminder once again, we are towards the end of our discussion and we will be taking your questions and your comments shortly. But I just wanted to ask my panel here before we open up the floor for our guests and the people joining us to interact with us. Is there anything, any parting words, anything that you really want someone joining this discussion today to take away? I'm going to start with you, Senatla.
Yeah, thank you, Kileborile. So I've already mentioned this before, but my parting word is understand your net replacement ratio, and also if you are going to make withdrawals from your retirement fund, understand how that affects your your net replacement ratio. These two things are not separate. So any money I withdraw, whether it's 25% now when I change employers or 50% later, is directly going to reduce the amount I can get from an annuity, and therefore mean my net replacement will become lower. So really try to, as you're planning with your financial advisor, if you are in a situation where you're offered a withdrawal and you feel the need to take it, try to at least understand the impact of taking this withdrawal on yourself. Because a lot of people often think that, one, they're forced to take this withdrawal, and two, they only feel the impact when it's now time for the net replacement ratio to kick in and we say we can only give you 1,000 pula and you were earning 10,000 pula, right? But you took out some money that throughout your career, those 25%, the 50%, you could have been getting maybe 5,000 or 6,000 pula, which is way better than where you are.
Gongwe ebile le ka nako eo no sa tlhoke that much wa bona?
exactly.
So I think it is important that we guide our clients, we guide our audience here that, you know, look at yourself at that point. Do you really need to take that 25%? No one is forcing you to.
Yeah.
Again, your future self will thank you.
Exactly.
Refilwe?
Yeah. Before I get to what I think my parting sentiments would be, I read something interesting yesterday, which was I found a bit profound. It said, your pension fund is not your retirement plan. So I think we need to further unpack some of these conversations to say, sometimes when our employer makes that contribution, we believe that we are planning retirement. But I think what we're trying to say today is that the planning process of your retirement is a bit lengthy, it's more involved, and I think as for parting sentiments, what I would love to say is it's important for us to get help. At Botswana Life, we have a good workforce of financial advisors who really do get trained on a lot on these concepts that we talk about, be it estate planning, retirement planning. And it's important for you as the client, as our guest here today, to start now. Do not think that the things that my colleagues and I are talking about today are complex. Get help, get in touch with your financial advisor, get in touch with us, and let's start something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And Laune, over to you.
For me, it would be simply to start early and save consistently. Like I said earlier, a small contribution over time can really go a long way. So I'd encourage each and every single member of the audience and on the panel here to start early and to save consistently.
Wonderful. I'm now going to shift focus to some of the comments we have received. I think it's been an insightful conversation if what we see coming in is anything to go by. So Dr. Gumbo, I hope I'm saying your name right, Gumbo or Gambo, says, what happens if a parent in my beneficiary form passes on? Can I be free to revise the form and alter the allocations, redistributing to other members on my form? I don't know who would want to take that question. Maybe I'll read the next one as you prepare your thoughts. Ms. Joseph says, good morning, kindly share the recordings of the meeting. Definitely we will share the recordings of the meeting so that you can take away the conversation and be able to replay it later. Maybe we can take the good doctor's question, what happens if if a parent in my beneficiary form passes on, can I revise the form after the allocations redistributing to other members on my form?
Thank you. Yes, so I'll start, I'll lay a foundation for the response and then I'll invite my fellow panelists to also step in. So this doesn't relate just to the beneficiary nomination form, it also relates to your will and any other document that would be providing for your loved one in the event of your passing. You can alter them. We would encourage you to review all of these documents at least once a year, just to ensure that they accurately reflect the situation on the ground, so to speak. With respect to your financial dependents and how much you would like to provide for them.
Yeah, agreed, Laune. It's important to review your will regularly to cater for those changes, such as divorce, death, and then make sure that it aligns with your current situation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Samatla?
Yeah, and I think Launa will correct me here, but if you had nominated your parent as a beneficiary and they pass on, the trustees would still have their duty to do an investigation, and that investigation should at least reveal that that parent is no longer there. But if you haven't reorganized your beneficiaries, then it's up to the mercy of trustees and their investigation or the findings of that investigation to say this is who the funds should now go to. So it's best to take that upon yourself to make sure that you maintain control of your retirement funds.
Yes, no, that is very true. So the Board of Trustees do have that authority to augment your beneficiary nomination form through their investigations to highlight either the absence or the passing away of a beneficiary, but also the birth of a beneficiary, someone who's come into your life, whether it be a loved one, a cousin that you've been taking care of, anyone within your life that is financially dependent on you can be included within the beneficiary nomination.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move on to the next set of questions. I think so many people are requesting for, one says they would like printouts or notes for this important presentation. If you've logged into this webinar, we will be able to share the recording with you so that you have a copy of it. We then got a comment from Ms. Candy who says, kindly touch base on an individual who is single and doesn't have children but have parents and siblings. Why is it important for them to have a will or plan their estate? I believe that is to you, Me Refilwe.
Yeah, okay. It's very important because in a situation where you are single, you are not married, but you have parents and siblings. I think this is an example I use of myself on a daily basis. It is it is important that you would know how your life is structured. There might be siblings that we spoke about, adult children not working, and it's a phenomenon that we're seeing that is rising. And even as a single person, what is important is to ensure that you then make provision for the fact that you do support some of your siblings.
Very
So
true.
sometimes when you don't make your estate plan reflect that, and you don't even have a will in place because you're saying, well, I don't have kids, I'm not married, I don't need this document, what will then happen is that in that event, your estate will be distributed to your parents. And maybe your parents are also pensioners. And if they pass on also, then maybe it's going to be distributed equally amongst your siblings. But maybe some siblings are okay where they are, right? And maybe you need to make those adjustments and say, look, I'm supporting one sibling and I need to give them the bulk of my estate, in as much as I don't have children, I don't have, I'm not married. So that is just simply to say, and thank you for that question, estate planning is for everyone. It's not just for married people, it's not just for people with children, it's literally for everyone.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to that a little bit, it also is important to do a needs analysis of those financial dependents.
Yeah.
So not to be controversial, but we do know that there are members of our family who are less responsible with money, shall we say.
Yeah.
So you also need to account for that.
Yeah.
If I want to provide for 2 individuals, maybe one is less responsible, I'll give the lion's share to the responsible one, but also have a conversation with that person to say, you will receive X, but in that portion, you also need to take care of this other individual. So it's very important to have those conversations with your loved ones.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think more questions are coming in. Fanyana says, kindly explain the difference between pension and retirement annuity. And I think it really comes from the discussion we had earlier, Sanatla, where the question I asked of you is just take us through the journey that one goes through from the minute they're employed, they're earning a salary, and maybe just reiterate that point for us to be a little bit more clearer. Yeah.
Thank you, Kileborile. So here we often use pension and retirement annuity, quote unquote, interchangeably.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is both of them are designed to pay you out as long as you are alive, right? The key difference, I would say, is that an annuity is actually it's a product that you are purchasing from a third-party provider, such as Botswana Life, where you agree with them contractually that they will pay you a set amount or an increasing amount, whatever the terms of that agreement. You agree with them that they'll pay you a set amount or an increasing amount for a specified sum of money. And this sum of money would be your savings, right? So a pension salary would essentially be the same thing. But you also have our quote-unquote pension that we refer to here, which is oftentimes the savings part of it, and not the annuity. So the annuity is what you get from the savings. The savings is what I'm accumulating
Yes.
to eventually get the annuity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then the next question that is there says, does Botswana Life provide financial advisor services to their client? Absolutely. I think I want to maybe just start off with you, Refilwe. When you introduced yourself, you spoke about some of the things that you and the team does. Perhaps maybe just talk about that, and then we can broadly speak about the financial advisor services that you can get from Botswana Life. And then I'll also then hand it over to Laune to do the same.
Okay. So the way we are structured at Botswana Life or at retail distribution, we have a workforce, I think a healthy workforce of over 700 intermediaries. We call them intermediaries. Some of them are tied to Botswana Life. We call them tied agents. These are our financial advisors, or some of them are under the broker services division, where you get your corporate agencies and your broker companies. And the way we do things there is that that's how we distribute our products and solutions through our intermediaries, and they are able to actually speak to everything that we've been talking about here. They do have a lot of knowledge with respect to the annuities that Sanatla has been talking about. They do have knowledge about the investments that you can take out. They do also have knowledge about how to go about planning your estate. So your first point of contact most times will be through your financial advisor. And what we do is, if you don't have a financial advisor, because our business is, I would say, intermediated, we would refer you to either a tied agent or a broker agent or corporate agent. So that is how we do things. And we do invest a lot in the training to ensure that they are conversant with these concepts that we talk about. I think as a company, we've moved away from this thing of, when you meet our agent, they'll talk to you about is Za funeral cover. I think we've done a
evolved
very
past
good
that.
job, if I should, hoot my own horn, of evolving our workforce to get it, our sales force to getting them conversant with such concepts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also one of the things that I wanted you to touch on is the fiduciary services that you offer.
Yeah.
From a financial advisory and counsel perspective. Before I let Laune jump in.
Yeah, so we do have fiduciary services that we do offer, and again, that is also intermediated through our advisors. And basically, your advisor's role really is to take you through the will application process, whereby us at the background or as the technical support to our advisors, we would be offering the advice. So really, it's for you to talk to your advisor to say, how can I get access to the estate planning service? And they would connect you with us via you doing your will or doing what you call the estate liquidity analysis, where we try and analyze all these things that we're talking about. They really come down to a point of saying, can I afford to retire? Can I afford to pass on? And that is a question that we always try and answer or help the client answer at the time that they've come to us to say, please help me plan my estate, and eventually come up with a solution called a will.
Fantastic. Over to you, Laune.
Thank you, Mechunga. So at BIFIM, we have a separate business unit called BIFIM Unit Trust that's geared towards retail investors. So we do have a suite of products that are catering to any and every Motswana, dependent on where they are in life, their level of sophistication, and their level of discretionary or disposable income. So you can come down to the BIFIM Unit Trust team here in Fairgrounds or on Bain Street in Francistown to speak to a sales consultant who will help explain and unpack the different products that we have and select one that is most appropriate for you.
Thank you very much to you both for that. There is another question in the chat. Good morning, and it's a slightly longish one. I'd like to offer a slightly different perspective. We often encourage retirees not to take the 50% lump sum because we want to preserve retirement income. And I completely understand that reasoning. However, could we also consider the tax planning opportunity? If the law allows a tax-free lump sum, wouldn't it make sense for some clients to benefit from that concession, provided the money is deployed strategically rather than spent? For example, could be used to settle high-interest debt, build an emergency fund, invest in tax-efficient vehicles, or even strengthen the client's estate plan. Shouldn't the conversation be a little bit less about avoiding the 50% commutation altogether? And more about ensuring there's a sound financial plan for how it is used. I think it's quite a packed piece of feedback that I think it is important that we reflect on. I don't know if
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll just start by
Okay.
taking a stab at it. That is precise. I think what Sinatla
Yeah.
was saying is that where possible, avoid, especially where you are just employed. Other people have ways of making other income. So if you're not into other things, and that is what the comment is referring to say, where now the client is trying to expand their estate, grow their estate, it might be beneficial for them to tap into. I think what we're cautioning against is just tapping into the funds to go on holiday, and holiday that you perhaps didn't plan for. But if you have a plan, and that is why we're talking about estate planning and retirement planning, if you have a plan that supports the growth or the protection of your estate with respect to these funds, I think you're more than willing, you're more than capable of doing so.
Yeah.
And also, I think one thing that we pick in estate planning is that it's not a one size fits all for everyone.
Yeah.
I, as Refilwe, the kind of plan that I need, versus, say, maybe somebody who is 20 years older than me, is perhaps even an executive or is about to retire, etc., etc. Well, I'm not that young, but anyway. The reality of that is what they need is different from what I need.
Yeah.
I'm possibly at a stage where I need to be preserving, not preserving, but accumulating,
Yeah.
right? And then that person is preserving. So preservation that strategy would be different from my strategy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe to add on
Yeah.
to that, just to really emphasize what Rufilo is saying here, every individual is different, our circumstances are different, and so it is quite important that you speak to a financial advisor before making any major financial decision.
Yeah.
The comment from our guest is sound, but it'll also depend on your level of sophistication and discipline. What are you using the money for?
Yeah.
Because in all of this, we have to understand and go back to the main purpose of a retirement fund, is to give you stable and predictable income in your retirement,
Yeah.
where you're not able to accumulate through other means.
Yeah,
So if it does make sense for you to take the commutation, then by all means. But generally speaking, for the average Motswana, it would be advisable that they not do so, or at least minimize the amount that they in cash at retirement, so
Yeah.
that more is available for your retirement annuity.
yeah,
I think we also have to emphasize, not to make it a whole, thing between Lawan
Okay.
and I, that the whole thing of it making sense to you is not a determination that should solely rest in you.
Yeah.
Yes, you may think about it. That is why you need to tap into the services of somebody else
Yes.
who
Yes.
can help you, be it your financial advisor,
Mhm.
your asset manager, your fiduciary specialist, who can help you, or your estate planner, who can help you really test
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fact that you want to, cash in
Yeah.
or cash out. Because I might decide that, but then maybe your financial advisor can give you a 360-degree view to say, oh no, this is a bad idea, or in fact it's a good idea if you're going to follow the plan like you said you're going to follow it. So it's not a determination for me to make and then carry out on my own.
Mm.
Let's invest
Mm.
in getting the necessary advice and
Yeah.
tapping into the necessary services and solutions that companies such as Botswana Life offer.
yeah. Which just highlights the importance of having sound financial advice, and you can get that one-stop shop here at Botswana Life. I think this is a quick one that we can take. Maybe just a reminder to our audience. We have you until 10:30, and we've got quite a few comments in our comment section. So I think it's important that we have these conversations. There's a question there from Re Simon, and he says, what advice can you give a 60-year-old who doesn't have a retirement policy? I don't know if there's anyone that wants to jump at that one.
Yeah, it is a difficult one, to be honest,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, these are the realities that many people have to face.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, where appropriate and where possible, seek financial advice. They can give you more detailed, more tailored solutions for your current circumstances. But if I may just opine, it would be important to look at your lifestyle and see what you can cut from that lifestyle, and try to aggressively save where possible. If you reduce your expenses and you build a modest nest egg, it could get you through the next few years.
Yeah. I think I'll just also add there to say, depending on the 60-year-old, we would need to look at their balance sheet. This is a list of their assets and perhaps liabilities. Hopefully at that age there are limited liabilities, if any. And then to see if they don't have a retirement plan. I'm assuming it's this an extreme case. They don't have life cover, but and that's the thing that we do at Relais Batswana. We actually spend most of our time investing in, these hard assets, your fixed assets,
properties.
matlo and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
we normally use this phrase, being asset rich but cash poor.
Yeah.
So if this client happens to be, and this is what happens a lot with retirees, elders, they invest a lot in cattle, they invest a lot in matlo, buying land and developing it. And that person's balance sheet can be quite healthy
Yeah.
on the face of it, but in terms of how then they can live off of it once they have retired can be a problem. So I'm saying this not as an expert in you guys' fields, but for me, if I am faced with such a situation, what I would do is I would look at what I can liquidate. Liquidate meaning gore nka rekisa.
Yes.
If I can easily sell 1 or 2 properties, I get you know, any cash
Letseno.
via
Yeah.
the pension funds that or annuities I ought to have planned for. Liquidate whatever there is that I can liquidate. Consider whether I can get an investment plan sorted through either BIFM or Botswana Life. There are those products that we do have at Botswana Life, so as side investments. And then also ensure that I put something aside also for rainy days and hard times like illnesses, hospitalization, to ensure that, you know, I need to pay for medication or hospital fees, there is a bit of cash available. I think somebody also at 60 will also be eligible to get a life cover. That can also help, you know, ensure that in the event you pass on. Because with such an estate where you've got a lot of, I would say, fixed properties, you might find yourself having to pay a lot in terms of your executor fees, conveyancing fees to pass your estate from yourself to your loved ones. And there are those solutions that we have at Botswana Life. You can get your life cover sorted, your estate liquidity cover, which speaks to now ensuring that your estate is well protected in the event you pass on. So there's a lot that we can do for such a client. It's not like everything is doom and gloom.
Yeah.
So the issue is just for us to understand who you are, what you have, and what are you trying to achieve at that point.
Okay.
Did you want to weigh in, Sanatla,
Yeah.
before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think what I wanted to add to that specifically is the pension fund isn't necessarily a bottleneck to the annuity space. So as long as you have a lump sum, however you have acquired it, as long as it's legal, Botswana Life will be, yes, Botswana Life will be happy to accept that and
Yeah.
provide you an annuity, especially with the age bracket that he's in. He's very much eligible.
Yeah.
So as Refila had said earlier, if you're able to liquidate an asset that you maybe think isn't generating as much cash for you, you can liquidate that asset and then come here with the proceeds of that, and we'll be able to give you an annuity or get an investment product that can accumulate a bit more, and that can be your quote-unquote pseudo pension fund that will get you an annuity just like anyone else.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. So there are options in place that we can consider for you. I think the key takeaway for me, ke gore, tla re bue, let us help assess and then give you a tailored solution, specifically looking at your needs and what you have. The other question that we have from Futi says, can an investment policy be transferred to a retirement policy? Can an investment policy be transferred to a retirement policy?
We're not
Uh,
sure.
Yeah,
So
okay.
We're
it
not
would
sure
I think
If we
about
get-
that. Can we get back to the
can
client
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
one?
We will
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
look a little bit deeper into that one and hopefully be able to
And
come
that's a
back
good
to you.
question.
Futhi, we've got your email address. We will be able to give that to you. More questions coming in. Is it possible that Botswana Life can offer medical insurance for a person you may have investments and pension paid through them to avoid overstretching pensioners? I think the question
Medical
here is
insurance.
asking about, like medical insurance. Currently, we don't have a product that speaks to that, but you know.
But you're giving us ideas.
Yeah, you're
Yes,
giving
yes.
us ideas. I mean, we are for Botswana, so definitely it is something that we're looking into. I think you're talking about, thoughts around gap covers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Then there's a question that says, can I withdraw from an investment fund or life cover? How much can I withdraw? What happens if I unexpectedly lose my job? Regarding my life cover, investment fund, and funeral cover while I am looking for work. I think the question here really seeks to understand, if I've got all
How
these
life
policies
covers
with you,
work.
can I liquidate? Can I tap
Sell
into
it.
some of those savings?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tackle, it's an interesting question. I'll just tackle it on the aspect of the life cover.
Okay.
So with a life cover, what happens is we have this amazing suite of life covers. It's what we call the Puelo range. And it has an investment or savings element to it, in the sense that after 15 years, you are eligible to get 15 years worth of your premium paid back to you, and I think with an extra 5% on that. And then, so that is as much as you can get out of it. Another thing is that you can use it while you're still alive as security, but I know that's not the question.
Yeah.
And that is as much as you can use your life cover for. What I am aware of, we don't have the right experts here today for that, but what I'm aware of in terms of the investment products, and you can also talk from your end, there would be a lock-in period to say you should have this product with us for a specific amount of time, and then once that time has passed, you can now start making your encashments. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're quite right, Refilio. On the BIFM side, we do have products that have what we call a lock-in period. So as long as you've met the terms and conditions of that particular investment, you would be allowed to disinvest out of that particular product. However, if you have not met the minimum lock-in period, then we would encourage you to be a little bit more patient and then disinvest from that particular product.
Yeah.
I think also there was the element of now not working.
Yeah.
Right. We have been able to assist clients who maybe their income has been reduced due to being in between jobs or whatever the situation may be, whereby you would then reduce your overall, I think from a life cover perspective, if you are covered, say, maybe for 10 million, you could then reduce that to 5 million, and that would also help in reducing your premium.
And
So I'm aware of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so that could also help in helping you adjust.
Yeah. So in that instance, you're then able to preserve your cover
Yes,
instead of
Yes.
losing it
certainly.
altogether. You
Certainly.
do still remain covered. So I think Senatla, you wanted to chip in, or should I just carry on?
I can
Okay.
add while Snatla finds
Yeah.
his words. So the question really speaks to diversification within your product base. When it comes to the investment side, I'll speak from the investment side. So we do have products that are what we call highly liquid products, the BIFM money market product, for example. This is the type of fund that we'd encourage people to use as an emergency fund. So if there is a significant life shock, you can access that money quite easily and not disturb your longer term savings, where there would be those lock-in periods. So it is really important to diversify your investments, to really think through the types of shocks that you might go through. Some are positive, some are negative, but you do need to cater for them financially while also keeping your eye on the ball with respect to your longer term savings.
Fantastic. I think she had also spoken about funeral cover, really saying, if I've been putting money towards my funeral cover and now I'm unemployed, can I be able to cash and take that money with? Yeah. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think as far as I understand, unless it was a special product with a savings element,
Yeah.
that would not be possible because that the premium isn't necessarily a balance that we're keeping for you.
It's not a savings, as it were.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I made reference to the savings element needing
Yeah.
to be there for you to be able to withdraw. If it's just a premium on the surface, then once you've paid it, we still provide cover. So
Yeah.
then there's no further exchange beyond us covering you for the event that you're paying us for, which
Yeah.
in this case would be the funeral. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I believe that is clear. There's also a question from Kiata Metsi who says, please guide on a scenario of a natural father and mother in a scenario where the parent who has given sole custody or who was given sole custody of a child passes on. The understanding is the serving parent then takes over. How do we advise on legacy planning and retirement in this case? I'm not sure if the question is clear. Do you want me to maybe
I
just-
think it's talking
Okay.
about guardianship,
Yeah.
largely to say, and I understand it to say, what happens where there is what we use these fancy words in legalese, but there's a natural guardian. There's the surviving parent who's still alive. So the law recognizes the rights of that parent to that child and their responsibility towards that child. So if the other parent has passed on, that surviving parent will still have that responsibility of being the parent, the overseeing parent. But of course, there are those complexities where maybe the parents were not together. You can still, in your will, appoint a co-guardian who would perhaps be assisting in the oversight of, how the children's, finances, how their care will be administered. And then in the event that still it's important to include it in your will to say, in the absence of a natural guardian, who do you appoint? Because naturally it will flow to the surviving parent, and then, but you're making provision for this particular parent or this guardian who would come in where none of you are there, or
Yeah.
both of you are not there.
No, you raise a good point there, Refil, and maybe just to slightly add to that, could you touch on the potential benefits of setting up a trust for that child as a way of safeguarding your legacy towards that child?
Yeah. So the benefits there is back to the example we accumulate a lot of property, movable property, and if you pass on and your child is at 10 years old, he can't necessarily own these properties directly.
Yes.
That is where the properties would be, if there's no plan for a trust, will go to the guardian fund, and the child would perhaps even end up getting them when they're 18. Now, we've seen what happens, even from a pension fund perspective. Children get access to huge sums amount of money, huge values in assets in the event that they now have passed, the parents have passed on and now they are of age. But we all know that an 18-year-old is not someone you could call being of age or responsible enough to manage their assets and finance as well without the necessary guidance or guardianship. So a trust could be great because a trust holds assets separately from your estate. And if you place those assets in the trust and you dictate how the trust will be run, managed by the trustees, then the child can even have direct access to those funds or those assets at the point that now they are maybe of age, proper age, they're more mature, 25, 30, however you would have dictated either in your will or in the trust directly.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There's also a question from Sophie, who is asking, is it possible that I can combine 2 life cover policies? If I've got 1 life cover policy, Hana Lehana, is it possible to combine them?
And this is me answering because I work a lot with tied agents and brokers. I don't think so. I don't think it's possible to combine. What I know is possible is to increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can increase on the existing one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 All right. I think we're fast running out of time. We've had so much interest, Railebucha. You've given us a lot to talk about and to think about. Maybe, I think, given the time, we'll probably just take one last question. We literally only have 4 minutes to go. And this will be from Helen, who says, does BIHL provide retirement policies for non-citizens who have 5-year permits? Does BIHL provide retirement policies for non-citizens who have 5-year permits?
5-year what?
Permits.
A permit, yeah,
Oh,
5 years.
5-year
If
permit.
we say a citizen of Botswana.
Work permit.
I
Yeah.
believe so, but I can confirm for her
Yeah.
after the meeting. But I believe our products don't. We
Restrict.
don't restrict on
Restrict.
nationality.
No, we
So
don't.
I think it's just to confirm that. But
I think especially because you can also buy an annuity, like you said.
exactly,
So
you
if
can just buy
a
it
client
outright.
like that would have a lump sum, maybe if they get a gratuity, they
Yeah.
would want to put
Yeah.
in something aside. So
I don't believe we have any nationality restrictions on
Yeah.
any of
Not.
our product offering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the overwhelming response and engagement on the discussion that we've had today. Clearly, this means that we need to come back and
Yes.
unpack a little bit more of what we discussed, and perhaps even bring more experts that are able to take some of the questions that maybe we may be conversant of in our area of expertise. Thank you once again. If you are here with us on the stream, on the webinar, you are free to contact us. I think they should be putting up contacts on the screen, our contact center 362-3700, as well as an email address where you can send an email to Refilwe and her team to be able to engage with you further. As I said, we will be contacting you again after this webinar, just to share the recording as well as the contacts as well. Ra leboga. Until next time, God bless.